Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Crash, and over the last 15 years, I've read over 600 manga, or at least close to it. And it just turns out that a little bit more than 100 of those 600 are Weekly Shonen Jump manga. So today we are going to rank them. Now, before we get into the list of this top 100 Shonen Jump manga, I want to to talk a little bit about some rules and to give you the normal, spiel of a top 10 list or top 100 list in this case. If you want to skip those, then there's going to be timestamps in the line here. But if you skip that, don't come asking or commenting why isn't X manga on the list, okay? Okay, so first of all, the common rules. This list includes every single Weekly Shonen Jump manga that I either completed or am caught up. Stuff that I've only watched the anime but haven't read the manga, or stuff that I've read the manga but haven't finished it yet are not included. As well as manga that are ongoing that I'm caught up but have less than 20 chapters, which include the last 4 manga released, the last batch of manga that was released. So that isn't included in this list. Everything else does. So if a manga isn't on this top 100, that means either A, I haven't read it, or at least I haven't finished reading it, or B, it's not a Weekly Shonen Jump manga. Sometimes you may think that something is a Weekly Shonen Jump manga, but then it turns out it's from Jump SQ or Jump Plus or something like that. These are exclusively Weekly Shonen Jump manga. As for the spiel, this is a subjective list, and I just want to let you know, it's gonna get weird. The top 10 is gonna get weird. That is because I have a weird taste in manga. Please don't get mad, or if you do, whatever. Just have in mind that this list is ordered based on how much I enjoyed certain things. So even if I enjoyed a manga, but another one that I enjoyed less has more coherent story or more character development or tackles this team and whatever, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if I liked this other one that is just, fun over it. Alright? This is my list. If you want to do your list, you're free to do so. Actually, leave it in comments below. What's your top 5 manga after you watch the list, or even just right now? Just let me know, because, I'm interested in that. And also, I'm not going to be talking in detail over all of the titles in this list. There's over 100. If I'm going to be talking in detail, first of all, this video is going to be like 2 or 3 hours long, and second of all, I'm probably not going to be able to. This is manga that I've read over the past 15 years. It's not manga that I read just now, so there's going to be stuff that I don't really remember and have to go with the rating that I give it when I finished it, or just kind of like what I remember liking it. And there's probably going to be some recency bias. There's probably going to be whatever is the opposite of recency bias, because it's hard to judge something that I read in 2009 the same way that something that I read last year or even this year. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the list. The biggest bulk of the first half of this list, or the first third of this list at least, is going to be cancelled manga. And that's true for the very first 2. Number 100 is Our Blood Oath, and number 99 is Guardian of the Witch. I don't want to get into detail over every single X manga, but these 2 are just the bottom of the bottom. It's not the worst manga that I've read of all time, for sure, but it definitely is some of the worst that I've read in Jump. So I think the reason why I dislike Our Blood Oath and Guardian of the Witch more so than any other in Weekly Shonen Jump is a lot to do with how messy they are in terms of the story structure, especially Our Blood Oath. I think Our Blood Oath really misses on any kind of point to the manga. You start reading it and there's not really a decent goal, not really a decent story structure, the characters are boring. The art style of at least of Our Blood Oath is good. Guardian of the Witch at least has a little bit more of a solid story that you can kind of understand. Although, honestly, I think Guardian of the Witch is kind of more boring than Our Blood Oath, but because it does have something there, it ranks just a little bit higher. On number 98, we got Earthchild. I've done an entire video on why I really dislike this manga. I still think it's better than these two, especially the first chapter. I think it was really, really good. But overall, still a big mess. There's a lot of like failures when it comes to the story, the way that the plot moved forward. And again, I made an entire video on that topic. You can go check it out when this one is done. And on number 97, I got the very first big title of the list, which is Saint Seiya. Saint Seiya is probably one of the manga that I dislike the most. The review that I did for it, just out of hate on Unlist, kinda was the precursor for this channel. So the only reason why I'm here right now is because I dislike Saint Seiya. So it makes sense that it goes this low on the list, lower than a lot of Axe titles that I'm going to be mentioning afterwards. There's a lot of reasons that's why I dislike Saint Seiya. I think while I can see that it did do a lot of like innovating when it comes to battle shonens, it did a lot of firsts, or at least it used a lot of firsts, and it really helped move the landscape of battle shonen into what we know it to be today. I think a lot of the things that it doesn't do them well. I think other manga at the same time or later on would perfect it. I think the story arcs kind of tend to be repetitive after the second one. The second one is most definitely the better one out of these, because the first arc is a mess, honestly, in my opinion. I think it really does a bad job at introducing the concepts and characters and goals of the story. I think the second arc kind of does a better job, and then the other arcs moving past the second one are kind of just repeats of that one in a way that it kind of gets a little bit boring. I don't know, the biggest problem that I have with the manga is the battle. Then the battle system. Battles are way too over the top. Like the entire thing, the entire point of the manga, the entire point of the battles is kind of how over the top they are. It just, the stakes are so high. It's so much that kind of breaks me. It's not, like for example, I think JoJo is over the top a lot of times, and there's a couple manga that are over the top that I find it funny, or at least find it interesting in the way that they do it. In Saint Seiya, it honestly is just kind of annoying. Like most of the battles are just, this character does this move, everyone acts surprised, and then either the move hits and everyone acts surprised that it hit, or it doesn't and everyone acts surprised that it doesn't, and then whoever got hit or not throws an even more over the top move, and it just like this, and like this move. The way that it's always over the top no matter what move they are, and then they try to make it even more with the next one, it's a little bit too much. And then there's the entire thing of Cosmos. The Cosmos is kind of like the power system, and for the most part it's a simple power system. The more you have it, the more Cosmos you have within you, the stronger you are. It kind of is like chakra in Naruto, or I think it's called Ki in Dragon Ball. So it kind of works more or less the same way. But the thing that breaks Cosmos, in my opinion, is the fact that Cosmos also works kind of like this godly figure, and it is told to us that because the characters, you know, the main characters are good guys and they're, you know, fighting for good, Cosmos itself will actually bend itself and make them stronger than people that have more Cosmos than them. And since most of the stakes in these battles are because they are going against people that have so much more Cosmos than they have, and then we know that Cosmos kind of like shifts anyways, it really destroys the entire concept, the entire stakes of a manga that is only based on stakes. So that's why it really does not work for me. And of course, the size of the thing, it's a big boy. It has, I think, over 27 volumes. I think it's the size of Saint Seiya. It really starts destroying you on the inside. The entire month that I was reading Saint Seiya was a rough one for manga reading. Overall, I think this one just annoyed me from beginning to end for a lot of reasons, some smaller than the ones that I mentioned, but these are like the big ones. for me, it definitely deserves number 97 on this top 100 list. Moving from that, we have a bunch of X manga. Number 96, we got Zip Man. He had good heart, but not really anything else but that. On number 95, we actually got a big one. It's Samurai 8. Now, I think Samurai 8, first of all, was a big disappointment from Kishimoto, the same mangaka that made Naruto, in case you don't know. I think it has a lot of the problems that Guardian of the Witch, Arboroad, and Nerdchild also have. A little bit less in terms of how bad it is, but overall, I think the lore of the manga was very confusing and very boring. Most of the characters I really did not enjoy. There were like 2 or 3 that I did like, and that's probably why it ranked a little bit above all the others. But overall, it was not a good one. On number 94, we got Build King, which is also another from a big mangaka that I haven't actually read anything else from them. But I ranked Build King a little bit higher than Samurai 8 because I kind of like the world of Build King, at least at first, and then it kind of got worse as it went on, but I honestly did enjoy the first 2 or so chapters. Number 93, we got another manga from another big mangaka. This is Cyborg Grandpa G. This is the debut title of Obata from Death Note. It's not good. It really is not good. On number 92, we got Double Taizai, 91 Itel C, and 90 Beast Children. Jumping into the 80s, 89 it's 9 Dragons Ball Parade, and on 88 it's actually not a cancelled title. This one is currently ongoing, and it's Ginka and Gluna. Now, I don't really like the pacing of this. I don't really care about the world building. I don't really care about the characters. I think part of that is because of the pacing of the manga. It's too fast for me to even care, for me to even enjoy it. And although it is slowing it down to a point where maybe I can start appreciating it a little bit more, I still don't care. The damage is already done, and that's why it ranks number 88. Number 87, we got Toron Dororon. Number 86, we got Mori King. And on number 85, we got Tokyo Shinobi Squad. So, number 84, we got the second big manga. And this one is probably the one where if you didn't hate me for Saint Seiya, you're gonna probably hate me for this one. Number 84 is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1. I'm ranking the Bizarre Adventures. I'm ranking the JoJo's separately. Part 1 ranks number 84. It is the lowest of the parts that I've read, which, by the way, are up to Part 5. I think JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Saint Seiya, and Ghost in the Shell are the 3 popular manga that I dislike. I don't tend to dislike a lot of popular stuff. I think the main reason why I dislike JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is the main character. It's Jonathan. Jonathan is one of my least favorite characters of all time. The complaints that people have over, you know, the generic tropey good guy of shonen manga. Most of the time, I really dislike those complaints. I think even if you're making a good guy character, which, by the way, it makes sense that the main character of a shonen manga is a good guy and it's showing perceived good values. We need these characters to be role models for our children, for our teens. So it makes sense that these characters are good characters. But I think there's a lot of things you can do. I think Tanjiro and Deku and Luffy and Naruto and Ichigo and even Goku are characters that have a lot more to them than just being good. They're still interesting. Are they the most interesting characters of their manga? Not necessarily, but they're still interesting. Jonathan feels like the actual character that these people complain about. He has nothing going for him, with the exception of he's good, he's a gentleman. That is it. That's the entire character. And of course, Dio contrasts Jonathan by being the worst character in terms of like values and morals. He's just super evil. Now, I also think Dio is the more boring villain out of JoJo's villains. The thing that I enjoy Dio for is Part 3, at least the final battle of Part 3 is good. Dio in Part 1, I really don't care as much. I think he's a better character than Jonathan, but I don't care for him. And, you know, there's the whole thing of they contrast each other, and that's cool. I like when the main character and the main villain contrast each other. I think that is an important thing to have in manga, not in manga, in storytelling. because it really helps, you know, the themes of the story going through. Honestly, it really feels like the contrast between these two characters are Jonathan is good and Dio is bad, which is the most basic, simple contrast you can make. I don't care. And that, together with a lot of other things that I don't like about JoJo Part 1 and even Part 2, which is the art style, I really don't enjoy it. And the poses, I think, is ridiculous. The dialogues are really, really bad. Honestly, they're really, really bad. I think that's the problem of like a lot of 80s manga. Saint Seiya also has really bad dialogues as well. The mixture, I just don't care. There's a couple things that I enjoy about JoJo. I don't think it's a horrible manga, but I think it's still a bad one. And going back into the cancel titles, we got on number 83, you got Candy Flurry. I thought the comedy of it was okay, but it was a very generic, very boring battle shonen. Number 82 got Redwood. I think the beginning worked. I think the pacing was too slow, which is the exact opposite complaint of Ginken Luna, but I think the pacing was super slow in Redwood. It absolutely destroyed it. The ending, normally I like meta endings, or at least meta segments of a story. You'll see that on upper ranks in this list, but I don't think it worked in Redwood. 81, actually, a manga that I think it's kind of overrated. It's Bone Collection. I don't think it's necessarily good by any means, but I think it's decent. I think, or you know, I like the art style. I like the characters. So it has a little bit of a soft spot in my heart, but it's still not really that good. On number 80, we got Stop Ibari-kun. I've talked about this manga a couple times in my channel. It's a manga that I really value and really enjoy the main character of Ibari, the themes going through the manga, and even some of like the family dynamics that we're going for it. I think some of the characters are really cool. What ruins it and what makes it ranked so low in this list is the comedy. The comedy is really, really, really bad. And especially the fourth wall breaking segments of the manga where the author really just joins in and kind of hijacks the entire story are horrible, and they are a lot. They're a big part of the manga. It shouldn't be, because it's just the author coming and just dropping a comment or two, but sometimes the author really just takes over and there's 2, 3, 4, 5 pages in the middle of a chapter, not extras, in the middle of a normal chapter that is just dedicated to the author, just complaining about deadlines and about writing the manga and things like that. And I understand the frustration of writing the manga, the frustrations of deadlines, and I understand them, but I don't really think that the manga itself, the middle of the chapter, is really the place to be doing those complaints. And honestly, that kind of ruins the manga for me. If it didn't have that, if the comedy was a little bit better, I think it would rank so much higher. Number 79, we got Neolation. I think the final chapters of the manga was really what ranked it higher for me, because honestly, if it wasn't for those last 3-4 chapters, the manga would probably be in the 90s. But because it had that, and those were really good, it jumped to number 79. Number 78, I got I'm From Japan. I also did a video on that one. I don't like it. I think the comedy, I mean, it's not horrible. We've passed the line of horrible, but I don't know. It's not that funny. Number 76, we got Neru. I only wrote Neru here, but the cover is gonna be here. Anyways, I think it's decent manga, but it didn't really know what it was doing, and you can kind of tell that. Number 75, we got Takamagahara, which is the X title that I read years ago. I remember enjoying it. It was one of the first X titles that I read. Number 74, we got the ongoing Tokyo Demon Bride story. It can be fun, it can have fun characters, but overall it is still kind of a mess for me. And on number 73, we got Burn the Witch. Now, I think Burn the Witch is probably also another one that it's kind of controversial. I know a lot of people don't like it, and I know a lot of people do. I really enjoy the art style. I really like the world that the mangaka Kubo is building. What we have right now, which is the first 4 chapters plus the one-shot, really doesn't show enough for me to like it more and to rank it higher. I think it tries to do a lot, especially I feel like it tries to introduce a lot of things that it doesn't do, and maybe it will do eventually when part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 come along, if they do, as what it is right now. it's middle of the road. And that's kind of like the point where we're at right now. These manga, even though they were quite low on the list, they're just kind of like middle of the road overall. Number 72, we got Ultimate Intai Kamen. I really liked that manga when I started reading it. It's dirty humor. If you like that, you'll enjoy it. If you don't, you won't. I think the problem of the manga is that it really overdoes the same jokes over and over and over again. Once you read past the first volume of the manga, you've seen everything that this manga has to give. And the ending was not good. Kind of like a common topic in Shonen Jump manga. Number 71, we got Yu Kamio Let's Loose. I actually quite enjoyed this one. Could have been much better if it had continued. Sadly, it was cancelled. I think it was a little bit of a mess in terms of genres. It kept shifting and what was doing. But overall, compared to other manga that did the same thing, you know, that ranked way lower on the list, I think Yu Kamio still was fun in each and every one of those steps. So overall, I still liked it. And on number 70, we got PPP, which just ended. It should have been way higher, especially if just the first half would have been quite higher than it is. However, the ending is where it fails. Not just the final chapter. I think the final arc will start failing. It just got confusing. The introduction of the new Lucky, I really didn't enjoy it as much. It's a pity to see that manga drop in quality the way that it did. On number 69, nice, we got Enigma, which is another cancelled manga that I remember enjoying the first arc. It was kind of like this mystery novel, kind of like the 999 and things like that. However, it kind of lost me going forward. It is kind of like a Shonen Jump that game manga, which is fun. But yeah, I remember the last half being a little bit more confusing. However, that's the only thing I remember. On number 68, we got Zombie Powder, Tirakubo's debut manga. I think especially the later arc is quite cool. If you like Bleach, you're gonna enjoy volume 4. The first 3 volumes, they were okay. I don't think they were necessarily bad. I don't think they're necessarily that good. But it really is the final volume that it makes it rank number 68, which is not that high, but it's high enough. Number 67 got Ginka Patrol Jacko, which is it's kind of like a spin-off slash prequel of Dragon Ball. I don't really remember it much. I remember enjoying it enough to rank it number 68. And number 66, we got Time Paradox Ghost Rider. That one was definitely another mess. I think when it was good, it was really, really good, and when it was bad, it was really, really bad. So it just kind of like averages out in here. And number 65, we got Lock On, which is another cancelled manga. I don't really remember. I remember liking it because I was really into shonen rom-coms at the time. I still kind of am. But yeah, I remember enjoying it enough back then. And number 64, we got Ibitsu no Amalgam, which is kind of like this horror-esque X title. I enjoy horror manga, so I thought this was pretty decent. And on number 63, we got Jujutsu Kaisen. Almost middle of the list. Probably not as low as some people thought it was going to be, at least people that know me. I really don't dig Jujutsu Kaisen's matches. Not matches, battles. I think the way that it shows visually, it's pretty cool. Like, the mangaka, like Gege, really knows how to draw panels and how to have, like, a cool flow through it. The art can be a bit hard to read because it is kind of sketchy, but overall I still enjoy it. And there are chapters that I quite like a recent one where, well, it's kind of like a big spoiler, but a recent one that had a really cool panel with Itadori was pretty cool. I think it has pretty cool moments. I cannot really hate it. I know a lot of people think that I hate Jujutsu Kaisen. I don't. However, I cannot enjoy it. I think the battle system is too confusing. The way the battles are like narrated kind of like break the flow sometimes. So all the good things that Kike does visually in terms of paneling are kind of like destroyed by the amount of text that it is used. A lot of the times we don't need that much text. I feel like a lot of times the amount of text really just confuses you more than you need to be with the manga that is already quite confusing. And I don't know. When it comes to battles, I don't want to be reading a novel. I feel like it's much better to just be watching it. And honestly, another thing that I didn't really enjoy was the first couple of arcs. especially the school arcs. I really didn't care that much about them, and I feel like that kind of also destroyed the enjoyment of arcs going forward, because that arc really destroyed my investment with the characters, with the world, and everything. So all those two things stopped together make it so my experience with Jujutsu Kaisen is just kind of like average, with some very, very few highs here and there. And that's why it ranks number 63. On number 62, we got Mitama Security, which is a fun X manga. It was kind of like the predecessor to Roboko and Gravity Wise and things like that. Number 61 for Doofy, I got Alien Zeria, recent X manga. I liked it. Number 60, we got Super Smartphone, which was from the same batch. I also quite like it, or enjoyed it. On number 59, we got Mashle, which I ranked it a little bit above Jujutsu Kaisen. I feel like I like it a little bit more, at least at parts. When it started, I wasn't really into the comedy. I kind of grew a little bit more into the, not necessarily the comedy style of the manga. I like the part where Mashle punched the dudes, essentially. I liked the character of Mashle. I liked the way that the fights were made. I thought was kind of funny. I never loved Mashle, but I thought it was kind of funny. Over the course of the next few years, I guess at this point, I really felt like Mashle started to lose me, especially as it became more and more of a serious battle shonen. It still has a little bit of that comedy in there, a lot of the times where the comedy that I'm not that big into, but I think the majority of it is being a battle shonen at this point, and I don't think as a battle shonen it's really that good. So that's why it kind of ranks on number 59. On number 58, I got Protect Me Shugomaru. Honestly, it's a fun comedy. It got cut short, but I don't know, I enjoyed it. On number 57, I got Anedoki, which is a cancelled manga as well by Mizuki Kawashita, which is one of my favorite mangaka in Jump. We're going to see a lot more of her stuff going forward, but for now, Anedoki was kind of like the one I liked less, especially because it is a cancelled title. On number 56, we got Phantom Seer, loved by many. I thought it was decent. I didn't think it was as amazing as a lot of people make it out to be, but it was definitely a decent manga. On number 56, or number 55, I mean, we got Pajama no Kanojo, another cancelled rom-com. I quite like this one. And on number 54, we got another JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, in this case, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, which I forgot the name. I think Golden Wind. So I liked Part 5. I liked all of the other JoJo parts that I've read so far, way more than I like Part 1. I think Part 5 ranks lower than the others that we're gonna actually meet. Not that far off on this list, but I rank it a little bit lower than the others, mostly because of the fights. I feel like the stands on Part 5 really started getting confusing, really started getting a little bit too weird. Not necessarily just how confusing it is. I feel like a lot of the times the characters themselves make huge leaps of logic to kind of reach the conclusion where they are able to actually go against the stand and actually understand their powers. Generally, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The explanations don't make a lot of sense, and that kind of broke me. I think the rest of it, honestly, if I enjoyed the battles of Part 5, it would be probably the best part that I've read so far, because I like the characters, I like the story, but because a lot of JoJo is the battles, and because I wasn't a big fan of them, it ranked, you know, a little bit lower than the others that we're going to see soon. But before we get into that, number 53 is High School Family, just ended. I thought was a pretty fun gag comedy. Some chapters, I think, if we're going to read every single chapter, honestly, I would say that a lot of them are kind of like a miss. But when it's good, especially some of the character arcs, especially the story of the dad character, throughout the manga, I thought was really, really good. I'm really sad that it got cut short, because I think another year into the manga, another school year into the manga, not real life year, another school year into the manga, could really do wonders to close off the character arcs that the manga did a really good, decent job at, and we never really gotten the conclusion for any of them. And that's kind of also why it got ranked a little bit lower. Same can be said about number 52, which is Ayashimon. I really like that manga. I really like the characters. I really like the fights. But sadly, it did got cancelled pretty early. We weren't able to see enough for it to rank higher. Number 51 is another cancelled manga, but one that got a decent run. I think it was 80 chapters, which is Magico. I've actually recommended to it way at the beginning of the channel. I think if you're a fan of Mission Izuku Family and the romance of Mission Izuku Family, the main romance, I think you may enjoy Magico. I do see a lot of similarities in the way that it handles the mixture between romance and battle shonen and slice of life, as well as, again, the main characters and their relationships. There are some similarities there. I do think Mission Izuku Family not only did it better, it has gotten a lot more time to shine, which is why it ranks higher on the list. And on the middle of the list, number 50, we got JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, and on number 49, we got JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2. I kind of rank these two very close to each other. Overall, they are kind of on the same level. There are things that I like more about Part 2. I kind of like the characters more. I kind of like the villains more. It is less repetitive, which is probably one of the main complaints of Part 3. I don't think Part 3 really is repetitive to a point where I don't like it. The longevity of it actually makes me enjoy the adventure and the characters a lot more. And I think that stands, especially because it is a novelty in Part 3, really helped the part feel better in some way, especially the fights were far more interesting than anything Part 2 had. And because, honestly, in Part 3 we still get Joseph, which is honestly the best JoJo main character I've read so far. The fact that we still have him and he's still a big part of the story really helps elevate it. And honestly, like, the road trip feel of Part 3 was really, really amazing. But overall, just because of the characters, I still slightly prefer Part 2, but not enough that I felt like separating these from each other. So 50 and 49. On number 48, we got Katekyo Hitman Reborn, which is a manga that I used to love when I just got into anime and manga. And honestly, it really fell a lot because I think I made, and I reacted to it, I made a video about my top 5 manga in like 2010, and I think Reborn was like number 4. So for it to be in like number 48 in my top 100 just Shonen Jump manga, it was really a big drop. This is probably a very hot take. I really liked the beginning of the story, the gathering of the crew, the gag comedy aspects of it. You guys know that I love gag manga. When it pivoted into battle shonen, I really enjoyed it at first, the first arc or so I did. Then I really enjoyed the later arcs. The things in the middle, it honestly got me, I got tired of it. The arc that is, I think, the most beloved one, which is a future arc, I really did not like it. I got really tired of Reborn during that arc. I kind of had to stop it midway. Eventually I did return to it, and I think the last 2 arcs are really good. But then the thing that absolutely kills it for me is the final chapter. I feel like it absolutely destroys the character of Tsuna, the character development that he had throughout the story. Honestly, just the development in general of the story from chapter 1 to chapter 400 or something. I feel like it absolutely destroys it, and it's still to this day my least favorite ending of all time, so I really can't put it much higher than this. On number 47 and on number 46, we got same name titles. Number 47, we got Hungry Joker, which I honestly quite enjoyed. It was a title by Tabata, which went to make Black Clover. And honestly, in some ways, I would prefer Hungry Joker to Black Clover if it had continued. Got like 20 chapters or something, but I really did enjoy the characters, the battle mechanics, the concept of getting powers from having these historical objects through time was really interesting. Hungry Marie is by Ryui Tamura, which is another one of my favorite mangaka. Hungry Marie is my least favorite out of his manga, out of his 3 titles, but I still think it is a pretty decent one. I still think it is a funny manga, which is probably my favorite comedy mangaka in Jump. And I feel like it is very underrated. I see a lot of people hating Hungry Marie. I really think it deserves a lot more than it got. On number 45, we have what is probably one of the most controversial manga in Shonen Jump. It's The Promised Neverland. Now, The Promised Neverland, if you just arc 1 and Goldie Pound, it would probably be like top 15, top 20. But when we have everything put together, it really drops once we get past the first arc. I think the first arc really establishes a lot of things that is not able to continue. in terms of genre, in terms of emotion, in terms of style. We kind of know that once, even the way the story is structured, that once we move past first arc, we need to break from the things that we fell in love in The Promised Neverland. The challenge that it had was to establish new elements to the story that people could fall in love with and could still enjoy. I think Goldie Pound did a decent job at that, but overall the manga itself, the overarching story, the plots, the characters that introduced later on, I think it overall failed. The ending, I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. Honestly, it's not the ending, it's everything around it that really makes me not enjoy The Promised Neverland overall as much as I do certain arcs. On number 44, we got the last manga I've actually read from Weekly Shonen Jump. It's Lilum Kiss, another Mizuki Kawashita manga. This was actually her debut. I feel like I ranked this a little bit higher also because of recency bias, but it was a pretty fun rom-com, and honestly, it reminded me why I love that genre. It's just a great mangaka. On number 43, we got Renaissance David Kuhn, another gag manga, another one that I thought was pretty decent. And on number 42, we got Black Clover. I think Black Clover is a little bit overhated. It does have parts where I honestly don't care as much, and I feel like that's been a majority of the later half of Black Clover. The current arc is fun. Honestly, I like it. I know a lot of people don't, but I think the greatest thing about Black Clover is just it's fun. Right? It is just a fun manga from beginning to end. Honestly, deserves a lot more love, even though it is only number 42 in this list. We're getting to manga that I like. I do think it deserves more love. It's not amazing, it's not a piece of art, but it is fun. On number 41, we got another fun, though cancelled manga. We got Mago-chan God of Destruction. I honestly loved the ending of the manga, especially for a cancelled title. I just loved the way that it did the cutesy element of the manga. It was quite fun to see all of these like monsters kind of being cute by accident. I think that was part of the charm of it, how everything just stumbled into that perfect element of just a little bit element of horror, but overall just still cute. It had wonderful characters, and I was really sad when it ended. Number 40, we got The Elusive Samurai, Matsui's most recent manga. I overall still think it's my least favorite out of his. He is another one of my favorite mangaka in Jump. The problem that I have with The Elusive Samurai is that I feel like sometimes in the wars and the politics, it kind of loses itself. I feel like The Elusive Samurai is best when we are dealing with the characters, the way that they interact, the way that they react to each other. The villains are also very interesting. I do appreciate that. There's a lot of things I appreciate about The Elusive Samurai, but overall, compared to these other manga that we're going to be talking about later on the list, I think it is not up there. Still an amazing one. Also an amazing one that don't hate it because of the position. On number 39, we got Bleach. I loved Bleach when I started reading manga and I started watching anime. I think the first arc is amazing. I know a lot of people don't care about the first arc. I really loved it. I think it did a wonderful job establishing the characters. A lot of them went on to be very underutilized. It did a wonderful job at establishing a little bit of the world, the atmosphere of the entire thing, the mixture of horror with these 2000s style, cool style of the 2000s that I still loved and related to, honestly made me fell in love with Bleach. Soul Society is Soul Society. I think it's amazing. And then Wekamundo, honestly, I don't care that a lot of people think it is kind of like a repetition of Soul Society. And I know I just complained about arcs being, you know, repetitive with Saint Seiya, but honestly, I think Wekamoto also does a lot of wonderful things, even if it is Soul Society 2. When it starts to lose me is with the fight with Aizen. Aizen as a villain is a wonderful villain, honestly probably one of the most iconic villains of all time, but when it comes to the actual fight between him and between the captains, I really hated that fight. It's probably one of the most hated fights in my life. and then things going forward, I didn't like the arc following that, the Fullbringer arc. I wasn't a fan of that arc. And then the final arc, I think it had good stuff in it. I think it did a decent job at kind of like establishing and overcoming some of the plot holes, some of the biggest problems that people had with the story of Bleach. I think it tied a lot of things together. Some stuff I still don't buy, like the fact that the Queen Sea just appeared at the final arc. It was a little bit too convenient, of course. The whole plot of the Yacht, I think was his name, the main villain of the arc, kind of like claiming to be Ichigo's dad, and then it's like, oh, I'm not like really your dad, even though I've been saying that, but it's kind of just a weird term that I use because of this and that. Was weird choice. Overall, I still like that arc. I'm not a Bleach hater. The parts that I dislike are enough to make it decrease to number 39. Number 38, we got Dr. Stone Reboot, which is a spin-off of Dr. Stone about Senku's dad. I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful manga. The ending was completely heartbreaking. The art is amazing. And honestly, for something that isn't truly really canon and it was just kind of like drawn by Boichi, which isn't even the writer of Dr. Stone, it did a wonderful job. As a spin-off, it's probably one of the better spin-offs that I've read. That ranked it number 38. Number 37, it's a manga that I wasn't sure if I was going to include it on the list or not. It's Act Age. I like Act Age. I think it was a wonderful manga and could be so much better, but sadly was cut short because of the horrible actions of the mangaka. Because of those actions, it did deserve to be cancelled. I don't think just because other mangaka have gotten away with it that he should too. I think the other mangaka should have had their manga cancelled as well. No matter how much I like Act Age, I just want to see the artist coming back, and as of today that I'm recording this, there's actually been the news that she's working on another one-shot that should be up by the time that this video is up. So that's cool because she deserves it. Her heart is amazing. But that's all about Act Age that I'm going to talk about. Number 36, we got Arbol Cop and Dolphin, another Ryu Tamura manga. I think this one could have been such an amazing manga. It had elements there that could amp it up to be one of the better Tamura manga. And if it was one of the better Tamura manga, or if it was the best Tamura manga, it probably would rank like top 5 on my list. Sadly, we did not get that. We got a lot of wonderful moments, a lot of wonderful character arcs, and even fights. I think the fights were a lot better than Tamura normally gives us. Sadly, it didn't have the time to become manga that it could have been. Number 35, we got Ikaro no Go. I really enjoyed Ikaro no Go. I kind of forgotten a lot of it, I'm gonna be honest by this point. But I really remember, it reminded me a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is not on this list because I've only watched the anime when I was a kid. But it did remind me a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I like the character, I like the duality of him and the spirit, and the games were interesting. But yeah, number 34, we got another rom-com. We got Ease, which I don't remember. I remember loving it. I remember loving it a lot. I remember loving it enough to probably be like top 15. The thing is, I don't actually remember the manga itself. I don't actually remember anything of the manga itself, so I kind of had to decrease a lot of points to it, so it ranks number 34. Number 33, you got Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba. I've actually done a full review of this manga, the things that I like about it, things that I dislike it. The main thing that I dislike about it is the pacing. I think it is too fast, especially early on. But once we got to the second half of the manga, I do think it gets a lot better, and I love the main trio. I don't really care about Nezuko that much, but I think the main trio, the boys, are really cool together. Some of the elements of the manga are really fun. The comedy just hits. The final arc, I think the first half when they're fighting the upper moons, honestly, is the best part of the manga. I think it has like some of my favorite fights in Shonen Jump, and it really shows what Kimetsu no Yaiba is best at. The final battle itself, I wasn't the biggest fan. The final chapter, I just don't care. I don't think it really ruins or betters the manga in any way. It is just like an extra bonus chapter. I feel like I just don't care enough. I think there's a lot of like good stuff in there on the later half. Number 32, we got Death Note. I really like Death Note when I started watching anime. This is the one where I haven't actually read the full manga. I've read parts of the manga. I recently started buying the volumes, and I've watched the entirety of the anime, but I just kind of wanted to include it anyways because I've read enough of the manga to understand the differences between the manga and the anime, and I've watched the anime, so I kind of know the full story. The thing that I don't like about that note, first of all, the second half, I don't hate it, but I have to admit that it's not as good as the first half. And honestly, as I grew older, I started to dislike Light as a character. Some of the plots, some of the things that it comes up with, it is too over the top. especially like the entire arc where he plans everything for like 6 months and everything comes just as he planned. That's the that's the meme, just as planned. It is from that scene where I'm just kind of like no, not at all. I know it just pulls me a little bit out of it nowadays. When I watched it for the first time, it definitely didn't, but it does decrease its rating. On number 31, above that note, it's me and Ruboko. It's I know I talk a lot about it. I know I make it sound like it's number one. I honestly love it. I think it is a fantastic gag manga. It's not my favorite gag manga in Jump. There's still a couple ones that we're going to be seeing. Out of the ongoings, I think it is one of the better ones. I think it does a lot of really cool things. I think it definitely is overhated. It is just a fun one. I think the references, I like Deadpool, if you couldn't tell by the thing there. I like the meta humor. I think it's done well, which I know a lot of people don't. And I like the characters. I feel like the way the characters are done is really, really good. The way that it implements those references, the way that it implements Shonen Jump into the character development, into those moments, really elevates me and Roboko more than a lot of people give it credit. On number 30, we got kind of like a similar name, Muyo and Roji, which is, honestly, I generally call it the better Phantom Seer. I think it does a lot of things that Phantom Seer did way earlier, because this is a 2004, 2005 manga. I really like the art style of this. I really like the creatures. I really like the story. And even the characters. I think the only thing that really pushes this one a little bit back is, first of all, Roji's development. I feel like it is set up to be a much bigger development than it is. I think the character was underutilized, especially as a title character. The manga is called Muyo and Roji. And Roji is kind of portrayed as the protagonist, even though Muyo is the, kind of like the big dude, the big deal of the manga. Roji is kind of like the character that we are supposed to relate to. I really feel like he ends up being underutilized. And then the final arc should not have been the final arc, because there is such an amazing final arc there. The manga has an amazing, really, really awesome final arc. The problem is that it is not the final arc, and the arc that follows it really does not, it doesn't establish a villain, because a really good villain, because the main villain of the entire story was defeated in the previous arc. It really doesn't have the same level of tension and excitement. I'm not saying that it should not exist, because it is not a horrible arc, but it should have been put before the arc that precedes it. The way that it is, the way that the manga is structured as is, really makes it feel like that final arc is very unsatisfactory. That is not a word, I think, in English, but anticlimactic. It's very anticlimactic because the climax of the story already happened volume or two before. Number 29 is another rom-com, Arasugawa in Mirror World. It's a short manga. It's around like 30 chapters, but it is not cancelled, and I thought it was honestly like just a fun rom-com. Number 28, we got kind of like another gag manga in Jump, I guess, which is Witch Watch. I've been really falling in love with Kenta Shinohara. I haven't read Scat Dance. It is not on the list. I've read Astra, which I love. Astra will be higher on the list than Witch Watch. But Witch Watch honestly just hits a lot of points. Sometimes it can be a little bit too wordy, but I really don't mind, because it is funny. It is fun. The characters are so lovable. And even though it has some hits and misses there, I don't think it honestly really are enough to cause a dent in the enjoyment of the manga. And even the misses, I honestly don't think they're that bad, especially once you start to learn and to love the side cast. Of course, they're never going to be as cool as the main cast. It can still be quite enjoyable. Number 27, we got the big girl, I was gonna say big boy, but the big girl of the newbies. It's Akane Banashi. I ranked it, and Axel ranked it in best new rookie of 2022 in terms of Shonen Jump titles. It ranked pretty high on Rogers Bay's Manga of the Year stream. It is just a fun manga. It does everything that Actage was doing a little bit better, and honestly, I don't think the art style is as good as Actage, but it does do a lot of things right, and I honestly kind of want to see it grow even higher than it is. On number 26, we got another Mizuki Kawashida manga. It's Atsukoi Limited. This is another short manga that wasn't cancelled. This one even got an anime, and I've recommended on the channel before. It's kind of like a almost a short story rom-com of sorts where all the characters are kind of connected because they are in the same class. It's really, really fun. And to get into the top 25, we start with a big one. It's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4, which is the highest ranking JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in the entire list because I have not read Part 6, nor 7, or 8, nor 9. It's the best part. Honestly, so far, to me, it's the best part. It has the perfect equilibrium of really good characters, really good story, fights that are interesting, kind of confusing at times, but not too much. They're still like enjoyable in their confusion. They're still enjoyable in the way that they're going, you know, the over the top elements of it are still quite enjoyable. And especially, I think the biggest thing of the manga is the main villain, Kira. I think the later half, or not really the later half, but like that final segment, that final battle, that final villain is so good. It's my favorite part of JoJo so far, and honestly that makes it number 25. On number 24 we got Yusei Matsui's second and actually most popular mangaka, Assassination Classroom. Now honestly there's a couple of things that I think Assassination Classroom fails at. When it comes to comedy, I think it has a lot of misses when it comes to the jokes. I think when it comes to the battles and everything, it's not amazing. It is just okay. When it comes to the characters, while I do like a lot of the characters, I do think it has a lot, like a big cast, and the class especially, and a lot of them are kind of filler. They still have like moments here and there, but mostly they are a little, some of them can be a little bit fillery. But still, even with all of those complaints, I do think Assassination Classroom overall is still a fun, amazing manga, especially the ending, especially some of the main characters. I think it is a manga that's just like Elusive Samurai. It kind of just sells you just on charisma alone, like the main characters, the way that the story is told, that it's somewhat different from your norm. It just overall, it's a really good story, and it has to be number 24. On number 23 we got Mission Yozakura Family. A lot of people don't like how it starts. I do. It was a manga that I really liked from the very beginning, but once it developed past those early chapters, I do think it gotten just better and better and better, especially when it came to Momo as a villain. I think it was an amazing character, and now the new villain Haza and the story surrounding it, it's a manga that's only been improving since it started, and it started already nice. I also really love the main characters of Tayu and Mutsumi. They are probably my favorite couple within all of Shonen Jump. I really love the way that it blends the action and the serious parts of the manga with the more slice of life, with the more comedy parts. And I think it does a wonderful job at setting up that family dynamic. I think every character there is really good. And the art is amazing. The double spreads of Mission Yozakura is amazing. You really should check it out. On number 22 we got the second of the big three. It's Naruto. Naruto was my first manga. Shippuden was. I watched the anime of Naruto. So technically this is one that I actually haven't fully read the manga, or because I've only read the second half of it and a little bit of the beginning recently. I went back and read the first 10 or so chapters, but it needed to be here. It was a manga that I read for 8 years. While there are a lot of things that I am not the biggest fan of, I think it's overall still a really great manga, and one that I have a lot of nostalgia for, especially the early days. But I do prefer the original Naruto, the pre-time skip. I really like the characters. I think they were very underutilized within the second half. I liked Orochimaru as a villain, especially the Chunin exams was amazing art. I really love that. Shippuden has good parts. I really didn't like the very first arc, and of course the ending. Not really the ending because of Naruto versus Sasuke was amazing, but the final arc, I think me and a lot of people have a lot of problems with it. I don't want to dwell too much into that. My complaints are the generic complaints. I guess just on a last kind of like negative, I don't care too much about Naruto, the main character. I don't hate him, and I do appreciate the elements of like the themes that the character tackles. I just don't really like his personality. But I think the manga has a lot of really good characters that both villains and heroes and mentors. Just the manga is just stacked full with really amazing characters that even if you don't like Naruto, you can still enjoy it a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot. On number 21, we got Undead Unluck, Rogers Bay's manga of the year last year. It deserved to a degree. There were definitely manga that I liked more that year, but when it came to current Shonen Jump manga, I think it had one of the stronger years. Just thinking about everything that it did, the final arcs leading to Ragnarok were amazing. And it's a manga that it doesn't look like at the beginning, but it's a manga that has this wonderful world building. The power system is really interesting. It leaves you to think, and it's different, it's unique. And the characters, I think it's the best part, and it's something we've been exploring more and more, the backstories of these characters, because we are introduced to pretty much almost the entire cast within the first 20 or so chapters, and throughout the rest of the manga we get to learn more about them. And some of the characters we only learn like 100 chapters into it. I like the fact that we are left to slowly absorb and learn and like these characters, even though they are introduced right from the get-go. Most of these have wonderful backstories. It is extremely underrated in my opinion, especially we see that the sales of it are not that good, but I do think that when the anime comes out and it passes the first volume or two, we really are going to start getting a lot more fans of the series as people start to understand how Undead Unluck does what, in my opinion, Jujutsu Kaisen tries to do, but even better. But that is just my personal hot take. I know a lot of people probably won't agree, but I do think it does complex power system and complex fighting in a way more interesting way than JoJo and Jujutsu Kaisen. Number 20, we got another ongoing. It is Blue Box. I'm just a sucker for rom-coms, and I think Blue Box is a really good one. I really like the relationship of like the main character and the main lead, the female lead, Shinatsu. It really reminds me of that high school love that these characters are feeling, and it really sells it that these characters, or at least that this character really likes this girl, and it really helps you want to cheer for him. I know a lot of people really love Ina, and I think Ina is a wonderful character. I just prefer the main romance, honestly. I think it's developing more. The only complaint that I had, I think a lot of people had, is that the main romance wasn't as developed as Hina and the main character, which honestly I forgot the name. We're changing that. We're starting to see that romance develop a bit more in the new chapters. It is such an innocent rom-com where a lot of the times we got ecchi which I don't mind. You're gonna see a lot of like ecchi harem rom-coms. I love those, but I do appreciate the innocence and how genuine Blue Box is when it comes to romance. The other complaint a lot of people have is the way that it's supposed to be a sports manga, but it doesn't have a lot of sports. My opinion of that is that it's not supposed to be a sports manga. It uses the sports element of it, I think, pretty well to establish the characters and their motivations and to progress the story further, but it is not supposed to be a sports manga, so it doesn't show the sports and the matches as well as sports manga would. To me, it makes sense that it does that, and I don't hate it. Actually, I do think it does the job really well. Number 19 is a sports manga, however, it's IQ. I think it's probably the most beloved sports manga in Weekly Shonen Jump, at least recently. It is not my favorite. My main complaint is within the post-time skip. I don't like it. I don't know, I don't like how the pre-time skip arcs ended, but it does have really good matches and really good characters and really great art. Not enough to surpass some of my favorite sports manga we're going to see later on this list, but it does have one of my favorite matches, if not my favorite match within all of manga, which is, I always forget the name. They call it like the trash bin fight or something. Karasuno versus Nekoma, I think that's the name. The two teams, I forget the names, sorry, but it does have, overall it has wonderful matches. I think the tension that it brings a lot of the times is wonderful. I'm just on the edge of my seat watching these games and not end, because sometimes they last longer than we think they do, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful feeling that Haikyuu gives me. So it ranks number 19. Number 18, we got Okuto no Ken, or Fist of the North Star, the quintessential battle shonen. I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did because I didn't like Saint Seiya. I didn't like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1. I thought Part 2 and 3, even though I liked them, I ranked them considerably lower than a lot of my favorites. Even Dragon Ball, it's a manga that it was an anime that I grew up with and I really liked. But I don't think if I had read Dragon Ball now that I would love it as much, if it was like my first intro into Dragon Ball. So I was a bit afraid of getting into Fist of the North Star, and the truth is that it is a simple battle shonen when it comes to the power system, when it comes to the fights, when it comes to the characters and teams. I think it does things a little bit more simple than a lot of the new ones do, especially because they're a lot based on what Fist of the North Star did, and they just kind of like build upon it. But what I think is that Fist of the North Star is the foundation of all of the battle shonen genre for a reason, and once you read it, you start to understand exactly what, at its essence, battle shonen is all about and what makes it good. I think it has also probably the best main character, that tropey good guy main character. I think Kenshiro is perfect. I think it's the best example that we have. It was basically the first, and it hasn't been topped since then. It is a really good role model. I think he has like all there for you to just cheer for him, for you to understand it, for you to want to be like him. It has some problems. It can be really repetitive in the way the story is structured. A lot of the villains are made to feel like they're the final ones, which in my opinion kind of ruins the thing, because if every villain feels like the final one, then technically none do. And it also has the same complaint that I had with Mao and Roji, or Muyo and Roji, which is that this manga does have its best and most climatic fight, the arc before the final one. It isn't as bad as Muyo and Roji, as the final one also has a lot of stakes, and it's also, in my opinion, it's pretty decent, and it does have a time skip there to help break things a little bit. It should have ended one arc earlier as well. But overall, it is, if you like battle shonens, if you like Shonen Jump, and you haven't read Fist of the North Star, it definitely is a must read. It helps you understand the genre and the story of the medium so much better. On number 17, probably a lot of people are not going to enjoy the fact that it is this high compared to a lot of others, but it's Nisekoi. Again, I love rom-coms, and I think Nisekoi does a lot of things really well. I think when Nisekoi is doing things well, it is doing things really, really well. It's probably one of the best. If it only had the good arcs, the good parts, I think this will be probably a top 10 manga for me. The reason why it isn't is because of the main complaint that people have when thinking of Nisekoi, which is the pacing. It really is baffling how a lot of times they develop something to just kind of like cancel it at the end of an arc and go back within. Like a lot of the times we see characters confess their love and then it doesn't lead to anywhere. We got clues to the big mystery that don't lead anywhere, just a bunch of red herrings here and there. Events that absolutely cancel entire arcs. There's a lot of times where you just kind of feel frustrated reading Nisekoi. Especially, I was reading it weekly. It a lot of times felt like it was going super slow. It should have been cut about half of the length that it was. But when it came to those big moments, when it came to those really good arcs, and when it came to the characters and the relationship that they had between each other, I think Nisekoi did it probably as good as some of the best rom-coms in this history of the medium. I really do think that the comedy of Nisekoi is on point. I really love the characters' faces, the way that the character arc in general, not the character, the art of the manga in general, but especially the characters' faces, when they really sell you on their emotions, and when it needs to be funny, it really helps a lot. And it just honestly, overall, Nisekoi was an enjoyable manga that I read from chapter 1 to the end weekly as they came out, and I absolutely love Onodera. I am still kind of sad about the ending of the manga in some regards, but honestly, I think it handled it pretty well as at least a lot better than a lot of rom-coms do. It just is a pity that it took so long to get there, and we had a couple too many detours to reach that point. On number 16 is probably another really hot weird take, and we're gonna start getting those as we move on through the list because my taste is all over the place. But number 16 is Gravity Boys, my favorite canceled manga. Really, like no other manga, no other Axe manga should be this high, and there's argument for Gravity Boys to not be this high. I do think it's one of the funniest manga the Jump had, at least out of the ones that I read. It's one of the better canceled manga that Jump had. And with 50 chapters, it really did a wonderful job, even knowing it was cancelled. I do think can still get a lot from it. It had very, very few characters. I think you had a total of 9 characters, but they were really well done. And because we had so little, and because most of the manga was just based on 4 characters and the way that they interacted with each other, we really got to learn to love them and to see them almost as friends. Now, is every chapter really good? Not really. There's a lot of misses here and there. Overall, it is still fantastic manga, and the ending is really weird. It's over the top, and it in all the good ways. I mean, it's the Penis World arc, where they meet special spirit monsters represent their penises. It is just as wild as it sounds, and if you haven't read the Gravity Boys, you should. You're probably not gonna like it, but I did, so go read it. To start the top 15, we got Dr. Stone, the main one now. Again, I think there's a couple things that I didn't like about Dr. Stone, which mainly is the ending. I think the ending could have been better, and some of the pacing in some parts as well. The beginning was a little bit awkward, but I didn't really dislike it. And once we get going, it's really good. And I think this is one you're gonna see a lot of it. But what I love most about manga is the characters, and I think Dr. Stone had amazing characters. Like Senku was probably the best smart character that I've ever came across in manga. I think he did a wonderful job at not being an L clone, which a lot of people, like a lot of smart characters within manga, tend to be the edgy light clone, and Senku just managed to feel smart, to be a smart character that was unique, that was fun, that you could actually cheer for and not feel like he's just messing with you. Because a lot of times it feels like these characters tend to be overconfident with each other. And Dr. Stone, like Senku, did not feel like that. I do think Senku is the perfect smart character. More characters should be based on him instead of Light. Especially because Light is really hard to just kind of like miss and just create a very annoying character. And other than Senku, there's a lot of really wonderful, over the top, but in a good way, characters. Again, I forget a lot of the names, but Jin is a wonderful character. I really loved him. He's probably one of the best. My favorite was the captain dude. And his brother that appears towards the end was fantastic. A lot of the villains were also really, really good. Professor Shenu, I think was his name, the one with the X, that also appears towards the end. The sniper was also really good. I had a lot of like strong, cool female characters there that really fit naturally within the narrative as well. I thought that was really good. Then yeah, just an overall really fun ride. On number 14 we got We Never Learn. Now I would promise you that this would be the last rom-com manga, but it isn't. I think We Never Learn has, again, wonderful characters. I think it has one of the better main characters in rom-coms. It's very easy to fail because they're all kind of like the same. They're all supposed to be like this pervy loser character that everybody kind of loves anyways. But then We Never Learn, we have a main character that is understandably loved by all the girls. And honestly, he was my favorite character. I like him more than all the girls, and that's a really, really rare thing when it comes to rom-coms and ecchi arums. These manga, like We Never Learn, is generally a manga that is more about which is their favorite waifu. In a way that it wasn't like, oh, he's just me. No, he was someone much better than me, someone that I wanted to have as a friend. So I could understand why the girls really liked him. So for the cast of girls, I do think did a really good job at giving them dreams and passions and character development outside of I like this dude. Of course, We Never Learn probably is compared a lot with the quintuplets because the plot is kind of the same, and We Never Learn may seem like the worst manga from the two because it dabbles a lot in ecchi and a lot of the manga, a lot of the content of the manga is these characters getting into stupid ecchi situations and just having like misunderstandings and such. So if you don't like that, you probably will not like We Never Learn, because a lot of the chapters are just that. So at first it may look like Quintuplets is the better one because it doesn't have that. But actually, once you get into the manga, I do think We Never Learn does a better job at actually exploring the girls as humans with desires. So I think that's pretty cool for an ecchi rom-com. Honestly, that is my opinion. The reason why I kind of put it above Nisekoi is because I don't think it has that pacing problem. It has more or less the same size than Nisekoi. I think it is a little bit shorter. I do think it doesn't have that problem of just the pacing. The one problem that We Never Learn has, that a lot of people will complain, is the way that the ending kind of feels like a cop-out, where instead of the character picking a girl, he ends up with all of them. I do think that also shows another problem that We Never Learn, Quintuplets, and a lot of like modern rom-coms have, which is that the main character doesn't really love any of the characters. We don't really see a romance in the same way that Blue Box has, for example, and to a degree that Nisekoi has, where there's this character, where the main character really likes a specific girl. We don't have that in We Never Learn. Because of that, I don't really feel like cheated by the ending. It just is, you know, pick and choose your favorite one. I like how the different endings weren't just like copies of each other. They happened within different points of their lives, within different locations, and explored different side characters. So even though the endings are not canon within each other, they really help you understand the scope of all the characters better once you read them all together, which I think is very interesting to do within that specific kind of ending. You're not just reading the same story over and over again 5 times with a different character. Getting closer to the top 10, we got Shaman King. Now, the Shaman King, it really depends on what Shaman King we're talking about. Specifically, if we're talking about just the Shonen Jump Shaman King with the ending that it had within the magazine of Shonen Jump, it would be a lot lower, and probably that's where it should be, because we were talking about Weekly Shonen Jump. And that ending was one of the worst endings that I read together with Reborn. The new ending that it was given within Kodansha isn't amazing, but at least it's an ending. It does a decent job. And I decided to include it here because this way I could rank it above way higher. And Shaman King is one of my favorite Shonen Jump battle shonens. Again, the characters are amazing. The power system is kind of like very basic stands to a degree. It was inspired in stands. I like how they're kind of fighting with the weapons or characters of themselves. I really like the aesthetic of the entire thing. I really like, again, the side cast and the main character, but what I really love the most is how the main villain, I think he's probably one of the better villains within Shonen Jump manga, is not my favorite, but it is probably like top 3. He feels threatening, he feels fun, he feels scary, which I want a villain that makes me feel threatened by it, much more so than I want a villain that complexity in terms of like the things that they want and the goals. I just prefer something that that I'm wondering, like, how is this character, how's our characters going to defeat them, because then I am invested in seeing that guy lose, and I'm genuinely scared that we're not able to do it. Shaman King and How really deliver that a lot better than most Shonen Jump villains do. So that's one of the big reasons why it ranks this high. On number 12, we got Slam Dunk. Yes, I like Slam Dunk a little bit more than IQ, mainly because of the main character's growth within the manga. It was really wonderful to see him learn how to love basketball and see that character development with a lot of the characters, right? Like, I do think in terms of the character development, overall the characters themselves, I do think it has above IQ, where I think IQ has better matches than Slam Dunk. With some exceptions, it's not like Slam Dunk has bad matches. I do think it has wonderful ones, especially that final match. That final match is one of the better things that I've ever read. I know a lot of people don't like how it ended. I know a lot of people don't like Slam Dunk's ending. And to a degree, I didn't like how IQ ended the second half, or the first half, the pre-time skip. It is very much reminiscent of how Slam Dunk ends, but I think it works a lot better for Slam Dunk. And I know that's a hot take. I know a lot of people just don't, they wanted to see Slam Dunk continue further, and I would have liked to see Slam Dunk continue further as well. But how it ends, and especially with that final game, I don't think they would be able to top that game anyways. So in that regard, I do think it is the better spot to end. And so it just, I mean, it's shy of the top 10, but it is up there. Number 11, the last manga to not be on the top 10. A manga that a lot of people probably think that it should be, and a lot of people probably think that it shouldn't. It's My Hero Academia. I was not expecting to like My Hero as much as I do. Especially with the early parts of the manga, it really felt like, oh, this is a fun, enjoyable battle shonen, in the same vein that Black Clover is, and that would rank it more or less where Black Clover is, which is not like, it's not a manga that I dislike, it's a manga that I like anyways. But once we start to develop the teams and the complexity of the world, and especially when you start to develop adult cast of characters, that's when My Hero Academia really started to win me over. All for One versus One for All was the turning point to me. That match, that arc is perfect. It just sets up the teams that we are now seeing finally culminating. I know a lot of people don't like the final arc for a couple of reasons that I understand to a degree, but when it comes to exploring the things that I really loved about My Hero Academia up to this point, it is doing a wonderful job. It is doing exactly what I wanted to see it done. More or less, there's some parts here and there that I didn't, just didn't care as much. Overall, it's still more of a hit than a miss, in my opinion. The villain, like Shigaraki, is up there within my favorite villains. He can be complex, but he can also be extremely, scary. Genuinely one of the scariest villains I've ever seen. And Horikoshi does a wonderful job. Horikoshi has one of my favorite art styles in all of manga. Horikoshi just does such a wonderful job. And when it comes to drawing scary things, he does it better than anyone. So that really makes Shigaraki one of the most scary villains at times. And his power is just so vile. I love it. And just the League of Villains overall, it is what I did say about Shaman King, in a sense, where they're a little bit more complex, but in a sense where you can enjoy the complexity of the characters, but then you have Shigaraki being this genuinely scary monster, and then you have All for One being generally another terrifying creature in this world. So you can have both, and My Hero Academia has both, and both sides are done really, really well. So there's nothing to complain there. The only thing, I didn't care much about the school cast, which I understand they are kind of like the main characters, and saying that I don't like, or it's not that I don't like, I like the characters. I like a lot of the development that a lot of the characters did had, but overall I just don't care about them as much as I care about the adults, as much as I care about the villains. And even though I understand that they're the main characters, they're supposed to be the next thing, and they're going to be involved into the final battle, and they're going to be the ones where the manga is going to focus a lot more, I can accept that because we already had a lot of development, and we're still getting a lot of development of the adult characters, especially Endeavor, because I do think, despite everything, he's probably one of the most interesting characters within the manga. Jumping into the top 10, we got Ice Shield 21. This is definitely one that I need to reread. It was my favorite my first sports manga, and therefore also one of my favorite. I do think it did a wonderful job at having really good main characters, especially, I forgot his name, but he's one of my favorite characters of all time. But the dude with the guns and the spiky teeth. He's not the main character, but he's like the main side character. He's one of my favorite characters of all time. I just absolutely love him. The art is amazing. It's Murata, the guy who went on to do One Punch Man as his art style. So you know it's good. It's clean. It's beautiful. It really is really beautiful. It is another manga that the ending wasn't on par with the rest. I do remember really liking the matches. They really felt really tense at times, and we had chapters that were like 5 seconds or 1 second a single chapter, and just the choices and the action, and it was really well done. And Murata really did a good job at portraying movement, at portraying these characters going around, and each team had a really weird group of characters overall, but that it worked. I've seen a lot of people saying that it hasn't aged that well. I need to go back and read it and see for myself. I've heard that like some teams have not aged that well, but I remember they being like wacky and fun and interesting, and there were even like a lot of like emotional moments there that I really enjoyed. So it definitely deserves number 10. On number 9 we got one of the last ongoing manga, which is Sakamoto Days. Sakamoto Days in terms of like fights, I've said this over and over again, it has my favorite fights. It's very different and it's very imaginative and it's very fun. The way the movement is portrayed in here is also like really awesome. You can tell like things really feel very fast, like everything is happening in split second, and the action just up there, man. I love it. It reminds me a lot of like Jackie Chan, you know, kung fu movies, which even though I don't watch a lot of them, when I do, I really like them. I remember like watching Shang-Chi, which is like the first half is kind of inspired in those kind of movies. It was also really fun. And Sakamoto Days is that in manga format, so there's not really a lot to hate there. We are getting a lot more of the lore of the characters. That is wonderful as well. I like the characters. I think most of them are wacky and fun and interesting. And the way that these characters, sometimes they have like this kind of like superpowers, but they still work within the style of fighting, which is a lot of like hand to hand. I think that's genius. So yeah, another one that really deserves the top 10. All of these do. Number 8 is Rookies, and that's the final sports manga. Even though some people may not consider it all really a sports manga, this is a baseball manga where the main focus is not on the matches. There's not a lot of matches, and I think the first match comes like 50 chapters within the main story. But this is kind of like more of a delinquent manga. It's kind of like GTO, you know, in a sense, where it's about this guy who has a team of delinquents and is kind of trying to correct them and correct their path in life through the love of basketball. It really, not basketball, baseball. It really feels like a slam dunk where every member of the team is the main character. Again, I don't remember its name. I know it starts with an H, and an S. S, age or age, yes. At first, they don't really like baseball. Some of them do, but they lack the passion to play it. This is a team that have lost the previous championship. They hit a bunch of people and they got banned for a year, and they're able to now come back, but they are not really a full team. The only elements that are in the team are the delinquents. And it's really a wonderful to see these characters start to like baseball and see their development and see the team start to form together. Even though it is not really a pure sports manga and it doesn't have those big tense moments, it has some, but because there's few matches, it doesn't have as much as Slam Dunk or IQ or I Chilled. It more than compensates with the character development of the team, which is probably one of the best character development stories I've seen in my life. Go read Rookies. I know it is not that well known or that well loved, but it should be. Number 7 is Medaka Box by Inio Isin, which is now back with Cypher Academy, and is also known for Monogatari, of course. There are things that I hate about this manga. I think the beginning is quite slow. It is okay, but it is quite slow to get to the point of the manga. And then the ending is honestly quite bad, but I still wanted it to put it on the top 10. And the reason for it is because the middle parts are some of my favorite parts within manga. They're some of my favorite arcs of Battle Shonen. And part of that is because it is very meta. it is very much a deconstruction of the genre, where, for example, the main villain doesn't want to fight the main character directly, even though the main villain is probably one of the most overpowered things to have ever existed ever, but it doesn't want to fight the main character because main characters win, and she's the main character. And that's kind of like this construction of like this villain that kind of understands this position in the manga as a manga, that really made the story quite interesting and very different from what you're normally used to from battle shonens. Kumagawa, which is another villain slash anti-hero that pops, he sells the manga. He's one of the best characters of all time. He shines whenever he's on scene, and it makes this manga be one of the best manga of all time whenever he's in. So even though it has a lot of things that fail, I still think it deserves position number 7. Number 6, the last of Mizuki Kawashita manga, the last of the rom-com manga. It is Ichigo 100%. This is probably not tied because I love Lavina more, but it's probably like my second favorite rom-com of all time, just shy of being first because of Lavina. It has probably one of the better handled endings when it comes to rom-coms. It's not like We Never Learn or Quintuplets, where the main character doesn't like a character till the end and then picks one. This is a manga where there's 3 main characters, or 3 main girls to choose, and he spends a lot of time with them, and we see the love develop within one character, and then the love developing with the other character, and then with the other, and we start to understand why this character likes them and why they like him. There's one point that really stole me within this, which was that the main character realized that he was liking more than one girl, and he was trying to understand and comprehend and deal with these feelings because he didn't want to hurt them. And I feel like that's something that we do not see within rom-coms, when there's sometimes a guy who likes and is kind of like flirting with 6, 7 characters at once, and we never see that be a main team. This guy wants us all, but he's not going to be able to. We don't see that tackled in Harem enough, because it is supposed to be this power fantasy. And Ichigo 100%, even though it kinda is to a degree, it also is not. His more realistic development, portrayal of what an ecchi rom-com is, with still being an horror manga, still being really ecchi. I mean, Ichigo 100% is because he like the plot of the manga at the very start is because he sees the panties of a girl, and he wants to find that girl based on the panties that she was wearing that day. And that sounds really ridiculous, but the story really develops really well. From chapter 2, the story kind of goes into something else. I do think a lot more rom-coms need to be like this, and even Lavina kind of isn't, but I think Lavina handles it by being a ecchi rom-com where the main character really only cares about one girl. It is still a power fantasy in the sense that all the girls still like him. I think Ichigo 1% is definitely not a hidden gem because it was quite popular when it was ongoing, but certainly something that was forgotten within time that really shouldn't. If you like ecchi rom-coms, you need to go back to Ichigo 1%. Getting onto the top 10, we got Majin Tante no Gami Nero. This is Yui Matsui's best manga. Yusei Matsui best manga. If you don't know, Matsui is the guy who wrote Assassination Classroom, and now he's writing The Elusive Samurai. Now, Majin Tante no Gami Nero, or just Nero, is a manga that really fails when it comes to art. The art style of the manga is kind of ugly. There are some parts where it excels. I think the monster designs were really good, but it's not there. But the main character, Nero, is so fun. The girl, the other main character, the relationship is really good, and it is such a weird, strange, different manga because it is kind of like a horror battle shonen Detective Conan in a way that it is about solving mysteries and detective cases and things like that, but then it kind of develops a little bit more into a battle shonen. And then the villains, especially X, that's the character again that feels threatening but has a really great character development, a really mysterious and interesting goal of just wanting to learn about themselves, the duality between the main character and the main villain was really well done, especially because Nero is kind of like not really good character, in the sense of not really good person, because he's a demon. And it brings a lot more interesting development and interactions between him and the villains and the main character, the side characters, right? It is a manga that really kept me entertained and in love from beginning to end. Although it has flaws, and that made me put below the other four. I do think it's probably one of the manga that I loved more to read. So, yeah, top 5. On number 4 is a manga that I also kind of have some of the same complaints, and I know it feels weird because I've said a lot of really good things about other manga, and then I reach top 5, and I start with 2 manga that I say this has flaws. But I don't care, because these manga were some of the most fun things I've ever read in my life. I've enjoyed them more than I've enjoyed most of the manga that I've ever read. They do deserve to be in top 5. And on number 4 is Beelzebub, Ryuhei Tamura's best well-known manga. This one is just probably my favorite comedy manga of all time. I need to check with others, but I really do think it is. Tamura has a wonderful sense of comedy. The page turning, the paneling. Chapter 1 of Beelzebub is my favorite chapter of all time. Just for the single fact of it is the one chapter I can go even when I'm kind of like depressed, and it just makes me laugh. That's part of like Beelzebub as a whole is kind of that, where sometimes I'm feeling down, and even when it was ongoing, like weekly, sometimes some week I was feeling like down, and Beelzebub just kind of like cheered me up. It made me happy. And if there's something that a manga can do, and deserves to be called one of the best manga of all time, is make you happy. The characters, again, are wonderful. These are some of the most stupid, dumb delinquents of all time, and that just makes it so much better in a comedy manga. Olga is a very badass, stupid person. Again, the same thing that I said about Nero. The fact that he's not a good person, the fact that he's dumb and aggressive and kind of mean, makes it so that his interactions with the villains become so much better, especially because a lot of the times the villains aren't as bad as him. A lot of the time they aren't as vicious as he is. I just think like the side cast, as well as they develop and they're introduced, they're fun. I mean, it is a fun manga from beginning to end, and one that I really love to just go back and reread. It is still Tamura's best. Top 3. The just fun manga are over. Do not worry. Number 3 got Bakuman. In my opinion, way better than Death Note. The first volume has some problems when it comes to tackling the female characters. I do think it does it so badly that it kind of detracts of some elements of some of the goals of the characters. But once we start moving into what the manga is actually about, which is manga, it becomes so much better. The cast of characters, which are all kind of based on real life mangaka, but over the top, they are amazing. It is kind of like a sports manga. It has the tension of a sports manga. It has the rivalry / friendship of these characters working together and having the same goal and having to go against each other that sports manga do have, but it has that in there, and it does it probably even better than most sports manga, in my opinion. Like some of the scenes of like these characters just hanging out together and helping each other and fighting against each other was so good. The art style is amazing, of course. It is by Obara, the guy who made Death Note, the guy who made Ikaru no Go. His art is probably one of the best. That is not a hot take. There's just a lot of people agree with that, I think. And I do think it's great to have a manga that is able to introduce us, like, to let us know the world of Shonen Jump. If you are interested in that, it is wonderful. It is, like, really interesting to see some of these stuff. And coming from 2 guys who had worked within Shonen Jump, who know what they're talking about. Of course, there are things there and that are exaggerated. They're not really the exact same way that they are in real life. Of course, they're not going to be able to tackle and show every little secret of Shonen Jump. I do think it does really a good job at introducing a lot of the elements of the way that Shonen Jump works, and using that to just make like this competitive manga, essentially. we're reaching the final two. These two are the only manga in Weekly Shonen Jump that ranked at 10 out of 10. So all the others are good, but you know, I've said a lot about like this one has flaws here, this one has flaws here. I don't love them. They're not really among my top 10 manga of all time. Well, I love a lot of them, but they're not really among my top 10 manga of all time. These two are. And the first one, or technically the second one, number 2, is Chainsaw Man, and this is specifically about Chainsaw Man Part 1. Although I love Part 2, it is on Shonen Jump Plus, so I'm not counting that. I've talked about Chainsaw Man a bunch within the channel. I probably will talk a lot more as we go by. Denji is one of the better main characters that I've seen in Battle Shonen. The way that his goals are so different from the normal main character, and the way we see that develop within the teams, and the way that it relates to other characters, the way it relates to the villains, the way that we see those goals grow as he learns to value himself. It's really heartbreaking. And that is kind of like something that Chainsaw Man is. I know a lot of people call it like, oh, it has a lot of shock value, and it does. It does have a lot of like really brutal things happening. But what I think it is more than anything else, it's heartbreaking. Following the story of Denji, who had absolutely nothing. He was one of the most broken characters, introduced right from the get-go as that. And we see him gaining stuff and learning to love and learning and bettering himself, and at the same time getting more broken, losing the things that he got, and being tricked. And it's one of the most tough stories. Just if we follow, like, if we talked about the story of Denji. But then there's a lot of other things involving Chainsaw Man. The comedy is dumb and fun. Power is one of my favorite characters. She is hilarious. It is wild and over the top, and it's just like fast, like pam 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 there, in a way that it fits, right? It is a manga that is just constantly in your face, but it fits. And Part 2 is slower. I do think Fujimoto is handling Part 2 really, really well in delivering something that is still Chainsaw Man, but it feels a lot different at the same time, I mean, but it is also as enjoyable as Part 1. And Makime is a bitch. Number 1, it's no surprise for anyone. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt of it right now. I have the merch behind me, and it hasn't been on the list till now, so of course it is One Piece. I don't even know where to start with One Piece. We can start with the wonderful world building. Everyone talks about the world building, and to go a little bit more into that, not just saying like, oh, it's a good world building, and leave it at that. What I like about the world building is not so much how complex it is, but it is, first of all, the mysteries within the world are interesting. They're engaging. I think that's the main thing about the world building that people love. It's not just the fact that the places and the cities and the world is complex and well realized. It's the fact that the mysteries within the world are interesting, and they are begged to be theorized and just kind of like be discovered. The entire point of One Piece is to discover what the One Piece is. If the world building, if the mysteries surrounding the world are not well done, the manga would fail massively. But they are. The other element of the world building that I absolutely love is how it also feels like the world and time and the elements and events are moving outside and within the events, the main events of the crew. We see the crew go through an island and do this, and have this cause an event within the crew, within the island, within the next arc. Then at the same time, the things that they caused within the island will cause other characters that we've been introduced to or we've heard about, that are from other factions of other places, that move. And they don't move towards the crew. They move to other places. A good example of what I'm talking about, just so you can understand, is the entire story that culminated in Marineford within the first half of the manga. Because if you think about it, Marineford wasn't about the things that the Straw Hats did. Of course, a lot of the things that the Straw Hats did within the journey are involved in Marineford, but what caused it was the entire backstory that was happening with Blackbeard, with Ace, with Whitebeard, with Shanks, and we were seeing those things happening within the arcs. We saw Blackbeard and Luffy meet him. We saw Ace in Alabasta, and we just kind of like introduced and see these things develop within the story. But then they were just kind of like they grew. Like these events were happening within, like in parallel with the main story, and then they culminated within the story. And I think this is kind of like a big one because it is the ending of part 1. There's a lot of like slower elements of this. Like for example, the fact that they defeated one dude from the, I forget his name, but the one dude from Arlong arc, the crew. And then we see within the cover pages, which are part of the manga, we see that he went on to just kind of like build a restaurant and things like that. And then we meet them back, and and we can see his relationship with the Fishman Island and everything like that. It makes the world so much more alive because there are things happening. They're just not related to the crew and to the things that we're always seeing. And I think that's amazing. Honestly, I don't think there's another manga that really does it as well as One Piece does. That's a world building. The backstories of the characters, just in general, not even just the backstories of the main characters, no, just in general, are so well done. They're heartbreaking. I really liked how these characters went through these hardships, but then we get to see them be happy with the crew and with their friends, and it really spoke to me when I read it as, an early teen. And the fact that they could still find happiness, they still have fun with their friends. A lot of the characters aren't really as well developed as they are in a lot of other manga, but I think what Oda does is he's able to create a character that is memorable, that is fun, that has a distinct personality with very little. Like, he can introduce the character within 2, 3, 4 panels, and it can be memorable. It can be an important character that appears later on, but even if they aren't, they are memorable. That's a really hard thing to do, and that Oda really does it really well. And yeah, the story is amazing, the arcs are fun, the villains are great. The art, I know a lot of people complain, I do think it's amazing. The paneling has been quite busy within like the time skip moving forward. The pacing can be a little bit weird at times, especially if you're reading it weekly. The fake that's kind of suck, and a lot of the girls kind of look the same. Those complaints, they really don't stop One Piece from being one of the best manga ever written, and from being the best thing Shonen Jump has to offer, at least out of the 100 manga that I read, and that is why it is #1. And that is, my friends, the list. My voice is dying, even though I record this within 3 or 4 different sessions, within 3 or 4 different days. Now, I'm also working on more Shonen Jump videos, so if you are new here and you enjoyed this and you enjoy Shonen Jump, definitely subscribe and definitely click on the video that I'm going to put there, because it's going to be a Shonen Jump related video. It's going to be the guide to Shonen Jump magazines, and I'm going to be talking about all of them, or at least all of them that I could find. So go check it out. And if you watch it through here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.